down. These late nights turn to days. Don't wanna let you down. With each breath we give away, it'll never be the same. I'm chasing somebody who won't ever ease the pain, but I don't want half of your heart, heart, heart. You can have it back if it's only half of your heart.
Welcome to the live stream, everyone. Let me switch over. All right, this is system build, and I just closed the screen, of course. System build 35. This is build it with the Brian series. We're going to basically go through building a server today. We are building a server that is Windows Server 2022 Standard Edition. It is not any other edition besides Standard right now. Standard is pretty standard. And we're not going to be going into anything too complicated there. We're just going to load the OS, show how it works a little bit, and go from there. But right now we're going to build all the system components at the current time. So let's go over to the overhead and show you what we're working with. Okay. Two. A little bit slanted. Sorry guys, it's a little slanted. That's not any better. There we go. All right, sorry about that. I thought I positioned this, but I did not. Okay, there we go. All right, so parts-wise, we have an AMD Ryzen. This is an AMD Ryzen 5 8000 series. It's a 8500G. Hard drive, we have a 2 terabyte P3 Plus. This is a Gen 4, I think? Gen 4. Gen 4 drive, but it's perfectly fine for what there are needs because it's really going to be for serving files, a little bit of application work, light load stuff. It's not that bad. We don't need Gen 5 for this because the motherboard also I don't think supports Gen 5, so we don't need that. So RAM, we have 32 gigabytes. It's 5200 megahertz speed. DDR5, 32 gigabytes of RAM. Vengeance memory from Corsair. Power supply, we're also choosing a Corsair. It's a Corsair CX550. It's an 80 plus bronze. It is good for power saving. I'm gonna put this over here. Case that we're using is a Thermaltake H17. I'm not gonna put that up here now, you'll see it a little bit later. Motherboard, it's a GIGABYTE A620M S2H. This is, we've kind of done a motherboard, it's the same motherboard before. It's an AM5 motherboard. It is a decent motherboard for what it is, and it works good for any workstation or server. What else are you going to need? You're going to need a flash drive with obviously Windows Server 2022 loaded on it, some sort of knife, a screwdriver, as well as some sort of cutters, and maybe some cable ties if you want. We're going to probably cable tie up. So I recommend you cable manage just for keeping things simple and easy without making a mess. So let's work on the motherboard first. We're going to get the motherboard out of the box. Inside the box, you're going to get some SATA cables. You're going to throw those off to the side. We do not need those. We don't have anything with SATA. The motherboard itself. And below the motherboard, you're going to have your infamous I/O shield and some manuals if you care for that. Close that down. Motherboard itself. We're going to work on the box right now. We're just going to work on top of the box so we have a little room to work with. Do not work on top of the bag. This bag is anti-static, but it's only anti-static on the inside, not really the outside of the container. So be sure not to work on top of the bag. Motherboard. There go by. Okay. So to go over some of the features of the motherboard, let's just go over that really quickly, get you familiar with where things are going. You have your RAM sockets over here. You have 2 sockets. In this case, we're going to fill them both up. So it really doesn't matter which socket you put which RAM into, but if you do have a 4-socket motherboard, you'll want to look at the motherboard and find out which sockets you need to fill in first. They'll usually be marked, you know, this socket is matched with another socket. They'll say like A1, B1, or B1, B2. So little things like that, you might want to check that over before you start. You want to check the motherboard manual if you can't see it already on the board. The board does have some markings on it. This one obviously does not have anything because it is only a 2-socket board, but 4-socket boards will have this label pretty much right over here in that general area. To go around the board, to just get you familiar, that's your RAM. You have your 24 power pin connector for your power supply, another fan header for the CPU, which is in gray, which is marked out for knowing that that's the different one for CPU. It's also labeled CPU fan, so you can see that there. Other power connector is going to be for ATX 12 volt, which is 12 volt rail. It's going to be your 8-pin connector. That's going there from your power supply. CPU socket, obviously the screw down for the fan to allow you to screw that in. We're going to take those off eventually, but this is going to be your socket for putting in your CPU. Keep the cover on until you're ready to actually put the CPU in. It will protect the pins that are in there. Since it's an LGA socket, the pins are on the motherboard. They are not on the processor, and therefore it should be protected. Down further, you have your SATA connections. We're not going to use these today, but if you have multiple hard drives, you'll be able to plug those in. This is for expandability at some point in time. If you want to use those, you can. Or in this case, we are using the NVMe socket right here, which is 1 socket for the drive that we're putting in. This is a simple server, so we don't have multiple drives. It's really just very easy. We're going to have one drive for boot as well as for data. If you have a graphic card, this is not a graphic card build, but if you do have a graphic card, you would put your graphic card in here. You'd open up the socket and put it into an open position for the graphic card to be accepted. This will close back down once you crunch your graphic card into the socket. This is also required to be pushed down if you need to take your graphic card out. So this one has a little of an extended little lever, and that will allow you to push it down to eject the graphic card. But we're not doing that today, but if you want, we have other graphic card builds. You can go back to those and see how they work and how we take them in and out. USB 3.1 is on this side. It should be 3.1. I'm pretty sure it's 3.1 or 3.2. This connector basically will connect to your front I/O, and that's fine. That is on a sideward connection, so you just put that straight in. Everything for your motherboard for your front panel connectors are down here at the bottom. You're going to have hard drive lights, reset. It's all labeled pretty much right here. It's really hard to see, but it is labeled F panel, and it does say hard drive reset. Above that, it should be power, I think. Yeah, above that is power, and then to the left is power light. The only ones you got to be really concerned about for direction are the ones that are LEDs. So anything like the power light or the hard drive light is going to have to go make sure positive is positive and negative is negative. System fan is another fan connector. Just if you have another system fan, you would use that. Moving over, you basically have your USB 1.0 or 2.0 connections. I think these are 2.0, but they're 2.0 for 2 sets of them. So just in case you have multiple things you want to plug in. Most of the time we only have one of these, and that's going to be for your front panel connector if you have them. Some don't, some cases do not. If you have a TPM module, you can plug it in here. We don't need it since we have a processor that has it built in. LED C and D LED. These are for any type of LED lights that you have maybe plugged in, like LED light fans or case fans or any type of case lighting. You can plug them in here and it'll allow you to light them up. Front panel audio, that's also for your audio connection in the front. This will be for your, like, you know, if you're using a headphone jack or something like that in the front of the system, you can use it here. That audio is kind of crappy. It gets usually very distorted, so I always recommend using the one on the back if possible, which should be on the back I/O here. Moving back up a little bit, gonna look at the I/O really quickly. This board has some simple I/O. You got your USB 2.0 for your keyboard and mouse, as well as a PS2 port if you still have a PS2 keyboard. You also have VGA in, you have Q Flash Plus, and you have USB 3.2, I think, here. You have also DisplayPort, HDMI, if you have built-in for your graphics, which this does have a built-in graphic card into the processor, so we will be using one of these ports. Your Ethernet port, and again, another 2 USB ports for anything else that you're connecting. This is a very simple I/O. It's not very advanced. If you're looking for very advanced, we recommend a different motherboard, not this one. This motherboard is a A620M S2H Gigabyte. So it's a Gigabyte motherboard. If you want to know all the parts, by the way, all the parts should be in the description and they should be correct. If anything's incorrect, please let me know. I will correct it later. So, but I'm pretty sure everything's listed the right way. We usually are pretty good about that. Okay, so building. We're going to start with, we'll just start with the CPU first. We'll see about the CPU this time. Doesn't really matter which direction you go. Double knife. Cut that open. We're going to be using the cooler that comes with the unit because we have enough room for it. But if you do not have room for it, or if you need a different cooler, you can use third-party coolers. Anything that's AM5 compliant should work with no problem. It's LGA and it's AM5, if you want to know. So opening this up, just be very careful. You're going to pop this down, lift the lever, you're going to lift the cover. You're going to inspect the pins really quickly just to make sure the pins are all good. And in this case, it looks like everything is fine. It should be because it's brand new. But just in case, you should always look just to be sure that there's nothing bent or having an issue with it, or any type of like little scratches on the pins or any kind of weird stuff. If you were buying used, you definitely want to look that over a little more carefully. You want to take the processor out. You want to find the little golden arrow, which in this case is the upper left corner. The motherboard has another matching arrow down below to let you know which corner it's supposed to match to, which it should be the upper left, which it is. It's on the case cover as well. It's also on the metal, very, very smallly on the metal, but it's also on the case cover right here. To let you know that upper left is where you're going to be positioning this. You're going to position the upper left corner, same thing with the arrow, matching the same way. These are keyed, so it should just drop right in place. Once it's dropped in place, you can put your finger on it just a little bit to make sure it doesn't slide. If it doesn't slide, then you know you've got it in there. And once you've got it in there, you can bring down the cover and then close it up. And the top will pop off. That's normal. Just take the protective cover off. Hold on to the protective cover for probably about a week just to make sure that like your motherboard doesn't have a problem or anything, or if you need to return it, you'll need that to return it. So I would just hold on to that for a little while until you're ready to go. I love that CPU, it looks amazing. Yeah, the AM5 is a little easier to work with, I think, than the AM4. The AM4 had pins, you can bend pins so easily compared to this socket, which this gives you a little bit more play. And the worst part is if a motherboard gets damaged. But most of the time, if you're very careful and you just put it in properly, you shouldn't have any issue. But yeah, the AM5 socket's a lot better. It's a lot more resilient in my opinion, especially for the CPU side. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these screws off here because obviously when we put in our cooler, we're not going to need these little clips. So we're just going to unscrew that. Sorry, that's a little bit loud. All right. Take these off. This out of the way. Now that you have these off, you can actually put in the standard stock cooler. If you have a third-party cooler, just follow those directions. It shouldn't be too bad. We have some third-party cooler installations, like ones from ID Cooling, as well as Noctua, and we have a few others. We have a few other live demonstrations of those. If you guys are interested in those, you can go to those later and take a look. But this is the stock cooler. It's very simple stock cooler. Nothing really fancy. It's the Wraith cooler. It's not the one with RGB. It's the regular Wraith standard one. It already has pre-applied thermal paste. We're going to use that. That's there already. It usually doesn't. Usually it's fine. It's good for most systems. So we're going to leave it the way it is. This does have a little notch over here, which is kind of like bigger. So you may want to put this away from the RAM because it will not fit if you put it the other way. If you got to put your RAM in, and you have it facing this way, you're going to end up getting over the socket and you will not be able to put your RAM in. So just a little advisable, you just may want to put it towards the left. In my case, it's the left. It might be right on your side because it may be reverse, but it is to the left. Lay it over the 4 little screw holes into the 4 little areas, and you're going to screw them down catty-corny side. So you're just going to basically go one side, catty-corner side. I can't believe what I just said. Just go one side, then go to the opposite side. If I can get it, there we go. All right, same thing. One side, other side. It is spring loaded, so you will hear a spring crunching noise. That's okay, it's normal. Usually I like to tighten down all the way after I'm done. And we're all the way down on that one. Good. Okay, good. All right. Once that's down, you're going to connect the CPU fan. This is a 4-pin connector. So you're just going to take that 4-pin connector, you're going to line it up with the one that says CPU at the top. It is keyed one way, so you'll see there's 2 little bridges. Those 2 little bridges go between this 2 little slides, and you just slip that in. And it only plugs in one way. So if you're giving a lot of pressure and it's not going, then you got it the wrong way, just flip it over. We're going to put some RAM in, so we're going to do that. Does this motherboard need a GPU? It's not the motherboard that needs the GPU, it's the CPU that needs a GPU. So the CPU actually has it built in. This is an AMD Ryzen 5 8500G. This has built-in graphics. It says with Radeon graphics. I don't know if you guys can see that. So it says with Radeon graphics. So if you choose a CPU that doesn't have with Radeon graphics, then you'll need to get a GPU at that point. So it really goes by the CPU, not the motherboard. So, but most motherboards will have I/O on them, you know, for that too. So you have there is 2 things to check. I mean, if your motherboard is really, really high end, some of the motherboards don't have any of the DVI and HDMI connectors. They just take them off because they assume that you're going to use a GPU. Then in that case, yeah, you would need to both have connectors here, as well as, you know, the processor itself will have to support it. Most of the AM5 processors have with Radeon graphics, so they already have built-in, you know, a built-in GPU into the CPU. Most of them. I think almost all the Ryzen 5 do. Don't quote me on that though. I'd always check anyway just to be sure. I think it's the 7 and the 9 that don't have it. Some of the series don't have 7 and 9 don't have it. RAM, this is DDR5, so you're gonna have to check to make sure that that little notch lines up with the board. Same thing with DDR4. You're just gonna line it up in the correct direction. And in this case, I think I might have it right. Hopefully. Nope, that's the wrong way. It's the other way. Okay, once you put it in, you'll hear the 2 clicks. That's the clicks for the actual RAM clicking into place, the little holders. And you need to repeat the process for the second stick. All right, so that's over here. Let me get rid of that. We don't need this. I'm just going to clean up a little bit so we're not totally covered in stuff. All right. Next we're going to do is we're going to do the NVMe drive. It's a 2 terabyte. It's a Gen 4. Let's open it up. This is from Crucial. We've had really good luck with Crucial. That's why we've been choosing them, but you can also go with Western Digital. There's a whole bunch of other companies out there. This Team Group, you know. Team Group might be a little cheaper. To put this in, you're going to have to obviously open up the NVMe socket. So we're going to just turn that around a little bit. We're going to pull the plastic piece out. This is the little holder to hold it in place. So we're just going to pull that over and let that be out my way. We're going to take the NVMe drive out of the container. There we go. Now the NVMe drive is obviously about the size of a piece of gum, like a gum stick. You're going to basically put this with the memory module side goes this way, so it goes into the connector side, goes into this, goes into the motherboard. You're going to put it on about a 45-degree angle into the board, and once it's in, you're going to push it down, and you're going to use the little retention holder to hold it down. There we go. Should be a little bit off the motherboard. There should be a little bit of a space between the board and the actual drive. This is normal. What kind of games can this computer play? Without a GPU, you're going to have a hard time. If you're going to go with this, you're probably better off adding a GPU to it. You know, you can go with, well, there's a new Intel GPU coming out, so it's already, well, it's actually already out, the B something. So the Battle Mage or whatever it is, that one came out. That's not bad, but it's, you know, it is Intel, so it's kind of new to the driver aspect. But yeah, this will basically play, you know, very simple games, probably with no problem, but anything with high intensity graphics, or if you want to go like 4K, if you have a 4K monitor, this is not a good option. You're probably better off with a GPU, adding a GPU to it. You probably also recommend, I also recommend probably upgrading your motherboard, because the GPU socket in here really isn't good for like gaming. I think it's only a PCI Express 4, or maybe it's like 6, I think, or 4 or 8, I think. So you're not going to get your full 16 lanes. I'd recommend probably going a little bit better go with a graphic card, and also add, maybe change the motherboard out to something a little bit nicer. Graphic card wise, depends on the titles that you're looking to play. I mean, you can go crazy. I mean, I recommend usually NVIDIA for games, just because they're more compatible right now. But you can also get an AMD graphic card for a lot less, or you can go with the new Intel card that just came out. We're testing a new Intel card next week, but not really for games. We're testing it for productivity. But yeah, you can use either one. So we're all three. All right, moving on. Where are we at? Okay, so we're basically ready to put this into the system. At this point, we got everything that we need here done, because we don't have anything else to add. So we're going to put this off to the side for a second, and I'm going to grab the case. We're going to grab the case. Let me get that out. This is garbage. Garbage. Okay. Ooh. All right. Sorry about the view. I'm just taking the case cover off. This is an H17 case. This will fit pretty much almost any standard part. This H17 case from Thermaltake is not really made for high-end water cooling, but it would be made for just all-in-one if you want to do an all-in-one. We're not doing that today, but I'm just saying what's compatible with it. Just to give you an idea, we are using just a regular cooler. We're not using anything fancy. But it is available to do that. I just wouldn't do a custom loop in this system. The custom loop would probably not fit properly. You'll probably have a very hard time getting that in there. I'm just going to go to the back first and kind of untie all the wires. Get all this out of here. That. Okay, the screw bag that comes with this should come with everything you need to pretty much install the board, as well as everything else. You can have some wire ties. Keep those on the side. Do not use these metal ones. This just gets stuck in the system and you'll end up with problems later. Just toss those. Try to use something that's the plastic ones. It makes it a little easier. You won't have to worry about metal being thrown around if something happens or it destroys a fan on you. The plastic ones won't do that. All right. So inside, you're gonna have a speaker. We don't use this, so we're just gonna toss that out of the way. But if you have any type of like testing that you need to do, you can use that speaker to test with. In our case, we don't really need that. This is gonna be your screws for your motherboard, as well as some standoffs. We're gonna take those out and look at them a little bit closer. We have some 2.5-inch SSD screws. They are labeled, which is nice. This is basically for any of your SSDs for mounting. Basically your SSDs will be mounted down here in these areas. You can slide them in here using these, and it'll allow you to mount those. We don't have any SSDs, but if you did, you would use those. 3.5-inch hard drives. These are for your more slower drives, your mechanical drives. Mechanical drives are mounted to the bottom base of this entire unit, so you can put one there. You could also kind of use the SSD area, but it's kind of tricky. I would recommend you just put them all the way down at the bottom part of the case. And if you have a mechanical drive, you'll put it down there. In this case, we're not doing any of that, so that's just going to go off to the side. That'll stay in the case later. Front panel connectors. I'm just going to separate them out. Actually, no, I'm not going to separate them out. Let's get the motherboard mounted first. We're going to flip this over just for now. To the other side. Okay. Before I do anything, I usually put the I/O shield in because I forget it all the time. Everybody forgets their I/O shield. It's really annoying. And if you forget it, you end up having to take apart the whole system to put it back in. So now is the time. I take the I/O shield out. Be very careful. Most I/O shields are kind of sharp. If you have a higher end motherboard, and I say higher end, just more expensive usually, the I/O shield might be already on the motherboard, so you may not have to, you may be able to skip this step. But long story short though, this is the I/O shield. It is labeled. If you're using QFlash Plus, you'll be looking for the one that says BIOS for the one that you're plugging it into. And the QFlash Plus button would be kind of like in the area over here. Everything's labeled on the I/O shield, so just put the I/O shield in place very carefully, and everything should line up properly. This one does not have any little bendable pieces. If there's anything to bend up, you may want to bend those pieces up before you put it in place. Just it'll be easier to install the motherboard. In this case, we don't have them, but some I/O shields have like little flaps and stuff. You may want to push those out of the way. So let's get down and put the I/O shield in place. It should just snap in. Again, just be very careful. This is kind of sharp. So if you get your fingers caught on that, you will not have a good day. I'm just going to put the fan out of our way so we can get the motherboard mounted. Let's get that kind of, there we go. Okay. All right, so with the I/O shield in place, we can now take a look down at the motherboard area down here. And when we're down here, we're going to basically look for anything that says micro ATX has to be filled in. So it's going to be number 2 here. Anything that says 2 will be screwed into. If you want to reconfirm this, you want to check your motherboard to make sure you got the correct ones. You can take a look at your motherboard first and look at all of the screw holes that line up, count them. You'll want to make sure that you have the exact same amount that you have up here to down there. In this case, the only one I have to move is this one here. So this one's going to have to be moved up 1 because it's in line with this side one here. And then right now it's not in that alignment position. It's down further. So I'm going to take a nut driver and we will take that out really quick. Is this one fun? Oh, that's not it. Give me 1 second. All right. Now, if you don't have a nut driver, that's okay. You could just use like, a pair of pliers or something. That's not the right one. There you go, got it. So I'm just gonna take that one out. If you use a pair of pliers, just be very careful not to scratch your case. You don't wanna, it'll be under the motherboard anyway, so it really doesn't matter too much. But for your own sake of knowing that it's there, you don't wanna have that there, so. Just unscrew that and just move it up 1 and screw it back in. Okay. Any of these that don't match up down below for the motherboard standoffs, you want to take them out and get rid of them. You don't want to have them underneath the board. That will cause a short eventually, so you'll want to avoid that at all costs. All right. So motherboard's going in. We're just going to take that out, put it in. And make sure that line it up with the I/O shield in the back. Line up with the screws in the front here. Make sure they should plop in place. Now with this case, the motherboard standoffs have like a little ridge, which makes it very easy to slide the motherboard in, and then it latches down into that ridge. So it makes it a little bit easier for the board not to shift on you. Not every case will have that, but this one happens to have a little ridge on those, so it makes it a little easier. The screw that you want to use for your motherboard is going to be this type of screw. I can tell you all the names you want in the world, but I'm just going to show you exactly what it is, because nobody's going to know what an M13 or 18 looks like or whatever. So they're not going to really enjoy that. This is it. It's a very thin screw. It's a machine thread screw. It has a regular Phillips end on it for this case. If you're unsure which one it is, take one of the standoffs out and try to use one of the screws and see if it works. If it fits properly, then you know you got it. If you're unsure, that's the best way to go. Again, you want to count down all the screws that you basically screwed in. Make sure that you don't have any screws that are loose or any standoffs underneath that you're not supposed to have. Repeat the process all the way throughout. If you are using an electric screwdriver, be sure to set your electric screwdriver to a certain amount of impact. You don't want to have too much of a torque on it, you know. So we have it set at 16 right now. It should be a little loose like that, so at least this way you're not over tightening the screws. If you're using it by hand, you just hand tighten down till it bottoms out. But don't over tighten. There's no reason to over tighten. If you over tighten, you may end up stripping a screw, which will be not a bad day, but it would just not be very fun because you have to take the unit back out and then undo the stripped screw. So it's a little harder to get back out of the case, especially after something's been stripped in there. Why are we not? This screw is kind of wacky. We have another one. There we go. Okay. Once everything's in place, just give it a little wiggle. Make sure there's nothing loose. I don't know if that's... This is the right one, right? Yeah. Okay. All right, everything's down. There is no hole for this one. That's just not in the case that one's further over for a larger motherboard, which we don't have, so that's fine. It's okay to be missing that one since it's not really over anything important anyway. Just to make sure you just don't have more standoffs underneath than you have above, you should be fine to go. At this point, I'm just going to plug in our case fan. This is the rear case fan. There is no front case fans in this machine. There's no need for it. It's got really good ventilation. If you do put a graphic card into this type of unit, I do recommend that you add in a few more case fans, maybe 1 or 2 in the front, just for better cold air intake. It will help with keeping GPU temps down, just in case. The closest fan connector, I think, is down here, which is kind of weird. Yeah, there's no fan connectors up top. So kind of sucks that it's way down here. It's kind of like in a bad position. If I was installing a GPU, I probably will not cross this section over here because obviously the GPU would go here. So what I would do is I'd probably put an extension on this and then run it back and then over to here. So I'd run it through the back part of the unit, back underneath and up over here. This cable I don't think is long enough to do that at the current time. I might be able to do it. You know what, let's try it. No, it's not going to go. It barely makes it over here. Yeah, it's not going to do it. Oh, no, it's not going to do it. Okay. So, but I would probably put an extension on it and then run it back to the back and around over to here instead of, you know, going right over the GPU socket. In this case, it's not a big deal. We know there's not going to be a GPU in this machine at all, so it's fine. There's no need for going crazy like that, but if you're doing this for your own install, you probably wouldn't want the wire going right across a socket or blocking things. You'd rather just go around the back part of the board to avoid all of that. A little bit of cable management goes a long way. I know a lot of people complaining about having to do a lot of wire ties. I like a lot of wire ties. I like to have a lot of things kind of strapped down so they're out of the way. They're not, you know, in the way at any time, not making a mess. You know, I try to choose the best solution for this. And in this case, the best solution is to kind of just avoid everything and tuck it under. Keep it out of the way. All right, we're going to do the I/O. At this point, we can put the power supply actually in. Let's put the power supply in. Power supply goes on the opposite side of the case. Usually when I'm working on a case, I don't spend as much time flipping it around. I usually build it straight up and down so I can get both sides. I'm doing this for the camera aspect because I only have one, you know, top-down camera, and it makes more sense. You guys can see a better view of it, where I would normally have the case just straight up and down and working straight up and down so I can reach both sides and make it a lot faster. But in this case, since we're doing demonstration, why not let's go with, you know, something that basically we can all see. Where's my knife? I put my knife up there. Knife. Where'd the knife go? Ah, there it is. Okay. Open it up. All right. Okay. Inside the box, you get a little manual. Nobody cares for that. Power cord, and your power supply itself, and some screws. All right. This power supply is not modular. It is got all the cables straight on it, so it's a very easy install. If you have a modular power supply, you'll want to plug in certain cables that you're going to require. At that point, you will want to plug in anything that you basically need, you know, cables for, which will be like your motherboard, your graphic card, any cables that you basically will need to get the system operational. In this case, we're going to be using the 24 pin. This is going to go directly to the motherboard on that side for the 24 pin. You're also going to plug in the one for the CPU. It is labeled CPU. Be sure that you make sure that you are using the one that says CPU for the CPU, which in other words for your motherboard. This is for your motherboard, not for your GPU. Do not make a mistake of plugging in the wrong one to the wrong socket. You will have the wrong amount of power going to it. You can damage equipment not having that correct. So be sure to plug in the right one. Other connections that are on the board, those are the only two we're going to really use, but I will show you all the rest of them just to humor everybody. Other connections that are on here are very simple. You're going to have Molex connectors, which are these 4-pin Molex connectors. These are usually used for older light systems or older peripherals, or not peripherals, older devices. You have your SATA connection. This is for your SATA hard drives. This is basically a very thin connector. It has a notch key on one side. That is how you would plug it into your drive or any other device that you're utilizing. You could have a fan controllers sometimes use these, as well as the Molex connectors. Sometimes they use those. So this is something to make yourself familiar with. And it only fits one way in there. It should be one-way notched. So just look for that notch, the opposite side of it being obviously a hole, and it'll go right through. Now going for your graphic card, if you want to use a graphic card, they do come with PCI Express connectors. They're regular. This is a regular standard PCI Express 4.0 power supply, not a 5.0 power supply. The 5.0 power supply will have another connector besides this. This is for kind of an older graphic, I say older graphic card, but any graphic card that basically uses the regular 8-pin connection. It does have 6 and it has also 8. If you push these together, it will give you 8, and that will give you an 8 plug for any of your 8-pin graphic cards. It has 2 of those, so if you need one for 16, you can do that as well. Now, they also have the new NVIDIA, I say NVIDIA, but it's really Intel actually created the standard. But it's the new PCI Express 5.0 connector. Don't have that here on me. We did do a build. I think the last build that we did actually had it. So if you want, you can go back to reference that. It does have it built into the power supply. I recommend that you get the one that is built into the power supply if you have a graphic card that requires that. Do not use the conversion ones. The conversion cables are kind of dangerous. There's a lot of plugging in to convert this to more of a high-powered connector. Just stay away from that. Probably just best off just to stay away from it, just to keep things simple and safe. So anyway, power supply, obviously itself has a fan. The fan is going to be facing downwards in this case because it has filters coming in from the bottom. And in that case, we will be pulling air in from the bottom and exhausting out to the back. This has its own little air compartment, or you want to call it, separated compartment from everything else that'll allow it to keep the warm air kind of flowing in and out of the case without actually affecting other components. That's the best way to install it. Now you can install it with fan up. If you put the fan upwards, you will have kind of a little bit of room here for it to pull air in, but you will probably be suffocating the power supply. So I would recommend using the proper way, which is down. You can go the other way though if you really wanted to. If you have like carpet or something and there's no way of lifting your computer up, then you might want to go the opposite way. Comes with the 4 screws to screw in the power supply. They're very standard screws. Again, machine thread screws, but they have a little thicker screw to it. It's also labeled PSU, so you can't really screw this up as long as you don't lose them. There's only 4, and there's only 4 for the back, so you're gonna screw that in towards the back. It should line up directly with all 4 holes for the back. And I'm not going crazy today. There we go. Okay, so I have to lift it up a little bit. This is easier if you have the case standing up instead of laying down the way I have it now. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to leave it downwards. I'm just going to lift it up a little bit to screw it in. So let's try that without making a total mess. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing it that way, just put the case straight up and down. In fact, probably best off to do that for the first time building. Oh, this one's actually lined up. Go. It's a little bent. There we go. Make sure it's all the way in. Okay. Once that's all the way in, this should not move at all. And you're ready to actually put the cables through to the other side. So cables going to the other side are going to be your 24 pin in this case. Try to untangle. I just tangled that all up. All right. This is CPU. CPU is going to go up here. CPU is going to go way up in the top corner. That's where that plugs in to the other side. And by the way, this is a lot easier if you already have the system upwards, because then you can physically see where these go. But I already know where they go here, so this is going to go that side. I just push them all the way down and all the way throughout, so I don't have to worry about having too much slack. Then once I get everything plugged in, then I'll pull back the slack so there's no more other stuff going in my way. I'm going to take all the rest of these cables and just kind of ravel them up. Give them a quick tie. And we're just going to shove them down at the bottom part of the case for right now. I'm going to tie them down a little bit better over time. But for now purposes, I just want to get them out of my way. And I don't want them running around on me. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to cut off the tail. I'm going to take those cables and at the bottom of the case, you're going to take this and slide that just down at the bottom here, out of the way. Now, since I don't want to keep moving this thing around 16 more times, I'm going to do all the front panel cables right now and push them through to the other side in the correct spots. First I'm going to do is I'm going to reorganize these so that the thicker cables are one way and the thinner cables are another way, so that now the thin cables are all going to go for front I/O, not front I/O, I'm sorry, front panel connectors, and they're going to show up. Why aren't these the same length? Wow, that's weird. All right, these all will go up and underneath into this one area here, which is the first cutout underneath the board. That's going to bring it up in the proper spot. Might have to tie this first. Yeah, I'm going to do a quick tie. Put some white ties there. Some ties up here. Just going to tie this down really quick. It only goes one way, really. So, just going to use the anchor. Sorry, use the anchor points here, so it's going to slip under. Tie that up to any of the anchor points. Kind of follow your direction that you want to go. In this case, that way, that's what we want. And I'm just tying this one up because it's very loose and it's very wobbly and I don't want it all over the place. Okay. All right. It's going to stay. It may stay on you, may not. If it doesn't, then we'll just give it another tie, that's all. Do one more tie just in case. Let me just tie it over here just so it's not moving on me. I might cut this one. I just don't want it to come backwards on me, so that's why I'm doing that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take all the other wires and feed them through. The USB 3.0 connector is obviously this blue one. It has the little mini pins, and it has a little key out at the top. That key only goes one way into the socket, so that makes it really easy. That's going to go here, because that's the bottom part of the board. Another one you have is HD audio. I think this is HD audio. Yeah, that's HD audio. It's pretty hard to read there, but it's there. That one is going to go all the way to the end and underneath the power supply right there. Well, above the power supply actually. And then you have your USB 2.0 header, and it says USB. That's going to go in the middle over here. And now on the other side, we're going to plug everything back in, and we're going to hold this all down, flip it over. Hopefully everything's in the right spot. Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah, everything's in the right spot. So, okay, so I'm going to bring this down. You'll see there's a bunch of wires, obviously. That's where we're going to all plug in. I usually plug in the 24 pin just to get it out of the way. I usually like to do the bigger cables first. Plug that in, you should hear a click. There is a clipping system. The clipping system that goes towards the edge. So if you have an edge on here, you want to make sure that that clip goes towards the edge, and you should hear it click into place. It should only go really one direction. Is that a hand? All right, someone's waving. Hi. All right. Going on, we're going to also now do, well, the front panel connectors. The 8-pin and the 24-pin have a little edge that clicks into it. If you don't hear it click, or you're forcing it, then you got it the wrong direction. Just flip it over. It should only go really one direction. It should only plug in one way, so you should be okay. Same thing for pretty much all the rest of the connectors except for the front panel connectors. The front panel connectors are not keyed, but everything else like your USB, this has a little block that's missing. It will be missing down here as well, and it'll allow you to plug that in only really one way. Now obviously we only have one set of USBs in the front, so it'll only be filling in one of those. And same thing for the audio, only one thing for the audio, and it's only keyed one way, so you should be able to plug it in one way. USB 3.1 or 3.2, whatever this is, that is going towards the front part of the case over here, and it is only keyed for one way as well. You're going to plug that straight in. If you need to take this one out, you're going to be very careful because sometimes the plastic kind of comes with it. At that case, you may want to use like a little mini screwdriver to pop that up to get that out if you get stuck. And by mini screwdriver, I really mean really small. So to get that underneath there like a flathead. Now, of course, you see all these cables all over the place. They're not going to stay this way. I'm going to pull all the slack back when I'm done. But until I'm done, I just want to get everything plugged in. Okay, so this one I showed you guys earlier. These are power switch, reset switch, hard drive lights, and power light. The lights are the most important to get the right direction. They are labeled plus minus, and you need to line them up plus minus on the board as well. And that is reset is next to it. Reset switch. And then power switch is above that. I'm going to do the power light first, that's easier. Positive, negative. This case happens to have really annoying front panel connectors. Some of these actually have a direct block that makes it a little easier. I always recommend using the block if possible. Are we going to see you before the New Year? If not, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Well, Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to you. I don't know if I'm going to have another live stream before then. I don't think we have anything planned right now. So, but we might have some videos coming out. I'm still working on editing a lot of stuff. I'm kind of doing that really slowly. So you will have some videos before then. But I don't think I'm going to have another live stream before then, unless another system comes in. But I doubt it because parts are taking a very long time to come in and they're getting delayed and stuff. So it may be a little longer than normal. All right. So everything down here, I'm just going to pull these cables back on the other side, and then we're going to tie them down, and then we're ready to do a boot test. So it's going to be really cool. Let's flip this back over. We're going to organize on the back a little bit. By the way, this is all this cable management. You know, this is up to you if you don't want to do all this cable management. You could literally just pull all these cables back, close up the case, and be done. You know, if you really want to do that. I like a little bit more organization because we have to maintain and clean these machines at some point. So I want to be sure that I have everything nicely laid out so that if we have to maintain anything, it's easy to maintain and we don't have to worry about that. I clipped this because I want to pull the wires back. I'm going to have a little more slack on here. So I want to get all the slack down into the case. Back part of the case, same thing here. This is going to be pulled up and down. What I'm trying to do is find where these little anchors are and line everything up within the anchor points. So that at least this way, when you're doing cable management, you'll have everything there. Now be very careful. If you notice, I'm pulling kind of a little bit rough here, but I'm not pulling extremely rough. The reason why is I don't want to rip anything out of a socket or anything like that. The point of this is just to make it nicer. It's not, the point is not to damage anything. So just pull on the wires till they kind of stop pulling and then don't go any further. If you're able to see both sides of the case, that's the best and most ideal scenario, because then at that point you'll be able to see if you're pulling too much of the wire. In my case, since we're not moving the camera around, I'm being very gentle, all right, in comparison to what normally I do. All right, so we're going to tie everything down. To get these wire ties to go underneath these little areas, sometimes they don't really go underneath correctly without a little bend, a little help. So you're going to give it a little bend on the tail, and that will give it a little curve, and therefore it will allow it to go underneath the anchor point a little easier. In this case, this one's a little rough. There we go. going to cut all the tails at the ends. Just going to get everything in place. Screw it down. There we go. Now this case is a little recessed back here, so you do have a lot of room to be able to put thicker cables back here with no issue. That's the reason why you don't see me flattening the cables. Some cases don't have a lot of room like this. If they don't, you're going to want to flatten these cables out and then use a wire tie to only flatten them down, not keep them chunky like this. Like this chunkiness is okay because we have a lot of room back here. Some cases don't have that room, so you may have to kind of work with that if that's the case, for that case. That's weird. Let me get more ties. I usually will use white ties on the back because they're a little easier to see against the black cabling. If you use black ties against black cabling, it will blend better, but it'll be a lot harder to find those cables if you need to take them apart. You can also use colored ties if you're into that. I had color ties for a bunch of years for the blue ones. I had blue color ties and they were really good. But they stopped making them in electric blue, the company I usually buy my ties from. So it became a little bit of a problem. But I kind of like the blue ones better because at least the blue ones you can know where, like, exactly where they are. If you need to untie something, you're not going to have a hard time finding it. All right, let's tie this in. Okay. That's this way. All right. It's a little better. We're getting there. So wires down here for the front panel connector need to be a little bit better organized, and then tied down this way. Actually, that's all right. That's not too bad. We're going to tie this one down up at the top. That's kind of just hanging out there. You're going to put it down to any anchor point that's closest. Again, this is kind of just repeat, but really it's about finding the best way to run your wires so that you'll be able to maintain them at some point in time. Like, that's a lot of wire. There we go. And let's take that down. The more time you spend on this, it's easier to clean in the future is really what it comes down to. So if you want to, like, clean out your dust in your computer or whatever, you won't have to retie anything. You won't have to worry about the wires getting in the way. You could just literally just use a blower and a vacuum and just suck out all the dust and the dirt and be done with it in a few minutes, instead of having to worry about, each individual strand getting dust on it and stuff. You won't have to worry about cleaning that. You could just easily blow it out and it'll just go, because you'll have some sort of resistance for the cable for it to work off of the air. Now, if something's not tied down, you'll end up blowing it around and the dust won't come off of it. Is really what it comes down to. All right, this cable I tied down a lot, but yeah, we got it. This is almost done here, and then we're going to do a boot test. We're going to boot up. We're going to load up server 2022 on this. Okay. Okay, there we go. Just going to cut up all the ties, cut up all the tails, I mean. Get everything basically trimmed. All right, one more. Careful to obviously not cut your wires. Everything's nicely down. All right, I'm not going to close up the case. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over. We have a little tradition here, and that tradition is we do not close up the case covers until we have first boot. Once we're past first boot, then, well, actually usually after I usually load the operating system up, then I usually will then close up the case cover after that. So first boot first, and we're going to move on to that. Let me switch over to my other camera. It's not going to see much with this. I'm going to plug it in, and what do we have here? Keyboard and mouse. Keyboard, mouse. All right. So use any keyboard mouse. I'm going to use any USB keyboard mouse. Let's plug this in. And We're going to power this baby up. You know, obviously, we're going to upgrade the BIOS first, if we can get in, without having to do QFlash Plus. Hopefully, we could just go regular QFlash. If we can go regular QFlash, which is just within the BIOS, that's the best way to go, just to keep it simple. Keyboard, mouse. I tied everything up. I should never have tied these up. Just leave them messy. All right. So anyway, we're not going to plug in the Ethernet cable because obviously I don't want to make a Microsoft account and I don't want to go through all that. So I'm going to avoid all of that. And I've already made a USB flash drive to avoid the Microsoft account, which, you know, is probably a good suggestion if you don't want to use it. HDMI, where are you? There you are. HDMI power. Power. Okay. Come on. All right. Flip the power button. Everybody cross your fingers. Hopefully it'll boot this time and I won't have to do anything special. Let's try it. Power's on. Fans are on. And we shall see. Hopefully. Did I plug in the keyboard? Yeah, I did. Okay. Sometimes the first boot with AMD does take a little while if it is going to boot straight up. If we get lucky. This is an 8000. All right. Come on. I know this plugged in, right? Yeah, okay. Plugged in, plugged in. Why do I have a feeling we're going to end up using QFlash? All right, let me check the memory before we go forward because the last time I made a mistake and it was memory issues. Up there it goes. There we go. All right. See, I didn't wait long enough. And this is the point. AM5, love it. DDR5 takes forever for memory to start training up. So you just got to be patient. And I'm never patient enough. All right. So it says, do you want to reset your FTPM? That's fine because we're not using BitLocker right now. So I'm just going to say yes. If you're using BitLocker, hopefully you backed up your keys before you started this process. But since this is a brand new machine, there should be no issue. So let's get into the BIOS. Delete. There we go. BIOS has been reset. Typical. It's brand new, so it's okay. Before we start anything, we're on F30. I think we need to go to F32. So where's my flash drive? All right, that flash drive ends up getting lost every time. And I waste like so much time looking for this stupid thing. What'd I do with the damn flash drive? Oh, it's over there. Sorry guys, just give me a sec. Just see what I did with it. There it is, found it. Okay, so I have the flash drive already with the newest BIOS. So what we're going to do is we're going to load the newest BIOS. We're going to pop this into any USB on the back. We're going to go in the BIOS. We're going to take our mouse. We're going to move over to QFlash. We're going to say update the BIOS. We're going to select. The other drive, by the way, is empty. That's why I figured out that my SanDisk is the one that has it. It is, I put the BIOS right in the main path, which is the A620M S2H12.F32E. That's a mouthful. All right. BIOS is protected by a secure flash. System must restart. Okay, that's fine. Update the BIOS. So it's going to verify the file really quick. This is normal. Just chill out. Now it's going to reboot. Reboot. And then it's going to install the BIOS. This takes a few minutes. This will always take a few minutes. It doesn't matter how fast your machine is. The BIOS always takes a while to update. There's more instruction sets as it goes, so it's always going to be a little bit of a pain. Should reboot into the BIOS screen anytime now. There it goes. It's going to verify the file twice. It verifies the file first time to make sure that you get the correct version, and then this one is actually verifying that the file is not damaged or altered in any way. Now, I still recommend that you always check your, you can always check the verification check. You can always verify that, make sure that you have a proper file before you start this process. Honestly, usually if you're downloading from a reliable source, like directly from the motherboard manufacturer, you're probably fine. But if you want to do a security check, you can check to make sure that that file hasn't been altered when you downloaded it. The checksum should match. By the way, that checksum did match. It did make sure that there was nothing altered before it got to here. Yep, sure is a mouthful. Yeah, every motherboard manufacturer and monitor manufacturer has like really long model names that are just really out there. So we just all kind of deal with it. This motherboard also happens to have a bunch of different revisions on it. I noticed last time I did this, we had revision 1.1 of this motherboard, which was weird. This is revision 1.2. Revision 1.2 has a different memory set of modules that are acceptable for this board. Version 1.1 had different ones. So you may want to also double check what revision motherboard you have and make sure that your memory matches exactly what you're looking for that memory, for that board revision type. I think, honestly, they should have made another model number, but, I guess they just didn't want to do that. They just made a revision number instead. By the way, all that information is available on Gigabyte's website, so anything you need for that, go directly to that motherboard manufacturer, go directly to your motherboard of that motherboard manufacturer, and you can get everything drilled down to type of memory, speeds, everything that you're, to your heart's content, whichever you prefer. I wouldn't go too fast on the memory speeds since AMD has some issues with the really higher end stuff. Motherboard manufacturers and AMD are working on fixing that. So I'm not sure if they fixed it recently, but the last time I checked, it was, I'd stay like 6,000 megahertz, a little higher if you want, but I wouldn't go too high because I think you're going to be wasting it. Also, 4-socket motherboards, 4-socket memory sometimes has issues also with AMD, the AM5 processors. You may want to flash your BIOS before you start doing anything with 4 sticks of RAM. You may want to boot with 2 and then flash your BIOS and then go to 4 later. If you have a problem booting, by the way. We're almost done. Updating BIOS 56%. Yay, 57. This is a little bit of time. Just sit back and relax. Don't unplug the computer or anything during this time. This board happens to have QFlash Plus, which protects the BIOS to some degree. So if this does happen to power off accidentally, lightning storm, whatever happens, it will still protect the BIOS. So you could still do a QFlash Plus option and go that route if that does happen to you. If that does happen to you, we do have a video on QFlash Plus on how to do it because you won't be able to actually go into the BIOS at all. You won't be able to see it. So you can do it through that button push as well as creating a flash drive that will support it. So. When you're through with this episode with us, wish us all a happy holiday, or I'll have to start calling you the Grinch. What's wrong with the Grinch? There's nothing wrong with the Grinch. I'll wish you guys a happy holiday when we're done with this, though. I will. Let's go into the BIOS. Let's fix up some settings really quick, and then we're going to move on to loading Windows Server 2022. This reboot is like a really long time. It may also, when you update the BIOS, it does take another few minutes longer than usual to boot. This is typical. You don't have to do this very often, so it's not that bad. The normal boot time is not really affected. When you get back to regular operations, your booting time should be a lot quicker. Eventually. Or it had a problem. Did it reboot? Yeah, there it goes. Again, I'm just like really not patient. All right, so let's go over to advanced mode to set up all the rest of the settings. If you want, you could look at this entire thing and you can see that, you know, your BIOS version is up to date, F32E, your motherboard version is correct, your CPU is correct. Make sure you have the right amount of RAM, which we have both 2 sticks, both at 16 gigabytes. They're right now running at the wrong speed. They're running at 4800 instead of, what was I, what do we, 5000, I think? Go back to the box. Probably should add that. It's 5200. So it should be running at 5200. So we have to set XMP and turn it on, which is not on right now. So I'm going to go to advanced mode to turn everything on, but you could look at this one screen to figure out a lot of, you know, what's going on. You could also select a lot of this stuff directly from here, but I like to go through all the settings so I don't forget anything. So I'm going to go over to advanced mode, and I'm going to leave myself off here because it's kind of in my way. Let's take a look. So down into XMP or Expo profile, you want to select that. Usually we choose XMP1. It should come up with the right memory timings. If it doesn't, select the other profile. It's probably a different one, or you can input the profile yourself. Most of the time, the motherboard picks it up correctly. If you have a Gigabyte motherboard, it's really simple. If you have an Asus motherboard, I found that they overclock the RAM a little bit too much, so you may want to check the settings and make sure to turn them down a little bit, just so you don't end up with instability. So advanced memory timings, we're just going to make sure everything looks right, which it is. We're going to just scroll down. Voltage settings are correct. I don't really change anything here. I kind of keep that the same. I just changed the XMP. I check the power. We make sure that everything is off on this. We don't like the S3 formats, the keyboard, and power on by mouse and keyboard. If you have an option for power on by mouse and keyboard, you want that on, this is where you would turn it on. We don't usually turn that on because it's a server. It's going to stay on all the time. AC back on always off. We leave this on always off just in case there's a power outage. If there's a power outage, we would rather have the system turn fully off and stay off than to keep flickering on and off if there's like some sort of surge or something like that. So for servers, we still keep them on as always off. You have to manually hit the button on. It's a little bit of an inconvenience if there's a surge, but it's better off. Most of these are usually on UPS power batteries anyway, so there shouldn't be a problem. Initialize display output. We usually leave this on PCI Express slot 1, even if we have integrated graphics. Just in case we add a graphic card later, it's ready to go. It'll automatically just check for the graphics and do that for you. Integrated graphics, I usually force this and I set the memory and everything else to on. HD audio, resize bar I always leave on. SRIOV support, if you're not using virtualization, you'll just leave that off. Gigabyte utilities downloaded configuration, I turn this thing off. This is annoying. It'll just pop up and continuously ask you to install drivers. Unless you guys like that thing, you can use it. USB, I kind of leave the same way. Leave legacy on just in case somebody plugs in an older USB port or USB flash drive. You'll want it to be able to work. Network stack, we don't change anything. System information, just double check it. The date and time are probably going to be wrong. Don't set the date and time. Set that in the operating system a little later. Boot, we're going to boot off of our flash drive because that's the only drive that we have currently running. Fast boot we turn on later. So Don't turn that on now, just in case you got to get back to the BIOS for whatever reason, you can be able to do that. Secure boot, you want to leave it on enabled and standard. If you're running Windows 11, you're going to require that, or it won't load Windows 11 properly. You want to save settings and exit at this point, and we're going to boot off of our flash drive and start loading Windows Server 2022. Now, this reboot may take a minute or two because it's going to try to ramp the RAM up to the newest memory profile and the new timings, so it may take a few seconds to double check the timings. That is normal, there it goes. Still a little faster than it was before. Now this is the loading screen for Server 2022. So Server, not Windows 11. We're doing something totally different today. It's going to ask you kind of the same questions. What language, keyboard input. If this is all correct, you would select what you want. Hit next, hit install. Hopefully it'll find the hard drive. Okay, now it's going to come up to the most dumbest question ever. It's going to give you Windows Server 2022 Standard Edition, which is standard. It says evaluation, but it's a full edition. You could do the desktop experience, or you could do data center. We're going to do standard and desktop experience. Desktop experience gives you an actual interface to work with. If you don't want the interface at all, then you would choose the first one, which is the reason why I say this is a dumb question, because most people want the interface. So if you're buying a Windows system, you'll probably want the interface. So we're going to do desktop experience. We're going to hit next. You're going to accept the agreement because you have no other choice. Custom, we're going to do custom. We're not going to do the other one because we have nothing on the machine, so it's empty. So this is all one drive. Most server installations will have probably multiple drives. You'll want to select the drive that you want to install on. And in this case, we only have one, so we're going to just choose this one. But you could also partition the drive at this point if you want to do 2 drives and to have 2 partitions. I recommend the whole drive as one just to make it simple. The only advantageous part is if you actually have 2 physical drives to give you a little bit more faster speed. If you partition a drive that's only one drive, it's still the same speed no matter which way you go. Even accessing the drive is still the same speed. So the only way it's advantageous is if you have multiple drives, or multiple drives in, let's say, a RAID or something. That will also give you some sort of advantage if you're in like a RAID 0 or a RAID 5 or a RAID 10. No, 10's slow, RAID 5, you know. But even that stuff is kind of dead right now. So moving on, one partition, let's go. Hit next. It's going to copy everything. Just sit back, relax, wait for it to go. It's going to install all the files. It should reboot a few times. Then we should be able to get into Windows. I don't think the server software really actually asks you for a Microsoft account. It shouldn't. But I've only done a few installations for Server 2022, that version at least. I've done 2019. I've done a lot of other operating systems before that. And they all didn't really require a Microsoft account, but then again, it's very new for Microsoft to be doing this and kind of pushing it. I personally just don't like that experience. It doesn't really do anything but have data tracking and a lot of extra crap that most people don't want. It does save some info between like one machine to another, so there is a benefit there. But you have to use the whole thing, and you'll have to use like one drive, and not everybody wants to do that. So, in fact, most people don't. All right, we're almost done. Installing features, come on. It's going to do a little quick reboot. It's going to try to install updates. I don't have the Ethernet adapter hooked up, so we're not going to do that right now. I'm going to restart. It should select the booting drive. GIGABYTE usually is pretty good about this. It'll normally select the Windows Boot Manager and boot right up. So we're going to try that. We're going to wait and see if it does it. If it doesn't, we'll have to go back in the BIOS and set it. It looks like it's doing it. Okay, we're good. So it's going to load up. It's going to go through its little process of getting things ready, checking for devices, starting services. That's what it's doing right now. It may do another reboot. and then it'll bring us right into the operating system after that. I think Windows Server does have a small out-of-box experience, but it's very little. I don't think it's really all that in depth unless they changed it. It should be shorter than Windows 11. Boy. Again, it's going to reboot a few times. This is normal. Just wait it out. Do not unplug the flash drive until you are pretty much ready to be in the operating system. Sometimes it does grab some files from there, even on the reboot. So just be safe and leave it there. It's not going to do anything. Okay, it's going to ask you for a stupid question about administrative password. We're going to obviously set a password because we have to. I don't know if it's going to let me do this. This might be too short. Oh, let me do that. That's odd. Okay, that's fine. Log back in. By the way, with server, you have to hit Control or Delete to log in. It doesn't just open. It does come up to this lovely screen here. So when this comes up, you're going to obviously, this is like their server manager kind of like WYSIWYG, like editor kind of thing. Wizard editor kind of thing where it allows you to kind of like add roles, create new server groups, change things around. I'm not going to get too far into this because this is really about customization of the server itself. Usually we do that off stream for customers because we obviously are putting a lot of personal information in for the customer itself. You know, we're setting up a lot of things like IP addressing and stuff like that. That is a whole nother topic. Right now, we're all still set to DHCP, but most servers are not on DHCP. Most of them are on static IPs. They're set directly for that because you're needing a static route to communicate to. So you would rather have that. Active Directory is also another option in here and some other stuff. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to plug in the Ethernet ports and put myself back over there so we can see everything. Right now, there's nothing connected, and it has the wrong date and time, of course. So I'm going to plug in the Ethernet port to make sure that we're got some sort of network connection. I also like to set the date and time. Yeah, it's fine. And date and time settings. I like to get this ahead of time. You'll want to set the date and time right away because a lot of security is set based off of time. And if you don't have it correct, you may have a bad day. That is correct. Okay, now it's correct. You want to sync it with like a time server. In this case, we're syncing with Windows, so it's time.windows.com is what we're syncing with. We're going to check the updates. There's always updates. While that's going, I already have some drivers downloaded. I may actually have the wrong drivers. I just realized this is Windows Server, and I think I downloaded regular chipsets, but we will, let's play with it. We'll see if it goes. If it don't go, then we'll have to just download the right ones. This may not go, because I think this is Windows 11 drivers, and I think I needed server drivers. We'll see. Most of the time, 11 and 11 64-bit and server will probably play nice. You shouldn't have too many issues. The programs are kind of really close to the same at this point. The product line's almost close to the same too. The only thing nice about server is that it doesn't install a bunch of junk like 11. 11 installs a lot of programs. You see on server it installs almost nothing except for Edge. So, you know, that's the nice part about it. It doesn't really install a lot of crap. I wish Microsoft would just do that for Windows 11 because I go through a lot of extra hassle to remove all that stuff. And we have a script set up for that. If you want to check out some of our other videos that have Windows 11, a lot of other live builds, we have live builds that have that. We have a script available for free off our website. You can just download the script and it'll get rid of all that junk. But it's just something that you shouldn't have to do. And I feel like it's something now that we always are doing at this point. It's installing newer AMD drivers. We'll go with that. Did I do chipset? I did chipset. Realtek. Just extracting the files because these are compressed. If it goes, there it goes. Just going to extract that. Install the better driver, hopefully. Gigabyte makes them pretty simple. They usually do silent installs, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem. If it does support that driver, it'll go in. If it doesn't support it, it will just stop. It'll complete to say it's done, but it's not really done. We're going to check the device manager when we're done to see if everything's good. We're waiting a little bit. Come on. All right, we'll move on to the next. Realtek. I don't know what that is. Some sort of chipset portion, I think. It's the other LAN driver, okay. LAN driver, APU driver. While this is going, you can do stuff like installing stuff in the background. You know, it's a server, it should be able to handle it. You just, you know, get through it as fast as possible. If you want to do one at a time, you can also do one at a time to make sure everything's installing properly. I usually just check Device Manager when I'm done to make sure everything's good to go. This is still installing an update. By the way, you'll also notice with Windows Server, Windows Update is different. That is a big difference. It'll say some settings are managed by your organization. Obviously, it'll automatically have a default policy set. You'll also notice that when it installs something, it disappears off the list as it goes. Once it's done, it'll just ask you to reboot, where Windows 11 keeps everything on the list as it goes down. It's a little different. It kind of expects you to know what you're doing here, so it doesn't really, you know, keep all that information. It does do a lot more logging though, so like your Windows Event Viewer will actually have a lot more junk in it, but it doesn't matter really too much. It's not that much information. It's just enough to make, you know, if you need to debug something, you can get to it. What else we already did? All right, so that's installing. That's still extracting. If you notice with server also, the product runs a little differently. So things like this on the task manager, you'll see weird things with performance. When you're running with server, it's actually better to take focus away from the current window if you want things to run a little faster, because server is more geared towards background processes more than foreground processes. Foreground processes take longer because it'll actually say, oh, it's a foreground process. It doesn't need to do anything very specific. So if you click off that window and go to something else, it'll make that considered a background process and it'll actually load that faster because it's, again, it's a server. It should be doing background processes faster than foreground processes. It's reversed compared to a workstation, where when you're on a workstation, everything in the foreground is what you're currently working on. So you want that to go faster. You want that to complete quicker. And your background tasks are more or less priority. So it's a little reverse. So if you notice, that's the reason why I clicked off the Windows Update screen and I went over to the Task Manager. It's not just to show you Task Manager, it's also to get it off of that window and put focus to the Task Manager. So now that becomes a background process and it loads a little quicker. It's a little trick. If you want to switch that, you can switch that around, but it kind of defeats the purpose of server. So, but if you want to use Windows Server, let's say as a workstation, you'll want to flip that setting around. And that's in your advanced settings if you really want to get into that. If you want to use it as a desktop, some people do, so more power to you. Probably want to do that anyway for the fact of programs being an issue. Let me check Device Manager. Let's see what we got. We are missing some stuff, kind of figured. This is normal. We've got to work through the drivers. Let's get the updates pushed in, and then we'll check the drivers. And I also want to load Chrome or something. I think they want Chrome. Chrome. They want Chrome. So let's do Chrome. enough of that. Let's go to google.com/Chrome, downloading. Should work for here. Come on. Oh, that's down here. Oh my God. All right, I didn't see that. Forgot it's reverse. Edge is annoying. All right, there we go. Now this says evaluation, by the way, down here for 180 days. That's normal because we didn't put a product key in yet. We will put a product key in later. We don't usually do that on stream because obviously it's towards the customer. It's a web browsing. That's annoying. All right, so when we're on Chrome, I'm going to get some more drivers for this board. So I'm just going to go to google.com and we're just going to type in gigabytes. What was the motherboard on this? This motherboard was right in front of me, A620 MS2H. Revision 1.2. Now you're going to see here that says revision. Obviously we're on 1.2, so I'm going to select 1.2. And we're going to go to support. Of course, drivers are a pain. And of course, this board doesn't have Windows Server drivers. So we're going to have to find them the old-fashioned way, which is using Windows updates, which is not the best way to go, but it will work. It's still updating, okay. Advanced options, no. Okay, that's still pretty good. All right, we got to do the first. We got the first two, the cumulative updates, and then we got to run a few reboots. And then once we're up to that, we should be able to find all the rest of the drivers directly from Microsoft for the rest of the remaining set. If you run into a problem where you can't find the drivers, like I just went to the motherboard manufacturer, they don't have a section for Windows Server. Do not download any type of like special utility or anything. Unless it's directly from GIGABYTE or directly from the manufacturer, you'll end up with more weird problems. I would recommend that you find drivers that are reputable. In this case, ones from Microsoft are reputable, ones from GIGABYTE are, from the main manufacturer reputable. Make sure you're on the correct site. You don't want to get a malicious driver. It's a real bad day if you got a really bad driver. So we're going to go to advanced also. Microsoft products. No. No, that's fine. Yeah, we're going to wait for the first few patches to go in before we do the rest of the drivers. The Ethernet driver is more important to get right away, obviously, so you can get connected. If you're looking for a motherboard or any drivers that are very specific to Windows Server and you want like WHQL, whatever, certified, then you'll want to go with server product. So you'll go with something like an enterprise product. Like Server Micro is an enterprise product. That would be a little different. But you're also going into an avenue of, if something fails, it's going to be a lot harder to replace, and you're going to have to probably wait and be down longer than if you have regular standard components. Like this is regular standard components. If something fails in here, swap it out, not a big deal. It's a micro ATX motherboard. There's nothing really special about that. When you go enterprise, you're going to have extra parts on hand. That's why when you go to server, requirements, if you want to go that route, have an extra motherboard. I'm dead serious. I know a lot of people are like, that's crazy. The motherboard should be reliable. It is, probably is, but electricity isn't. And sometimes that could cause a problem, and therefore spike out a motherboard, spike out a processor. At that point, you're also moving into processors like EPYC processors or Well, you can also go into Threadripper if you want, but that's kind of weird. You'd probably use Epic, because if you're using it for a server-based, Epic is better for that, because your TDP goes down, your wattage goes down. So the amount of wattage that you're pulling for the wall goes down compared to a Threadripper, where a Threadripper is pulling full wattage. And it also depends on the environment. If a customer requires enterprise equipment, they're going to have an enterprise budget. So that's another thing to be very concerned about. This is going to take forever. I got to switch off the screen. Yeah, see, when I was clicking back here, it was only using like 5 to 10%. Now it's jumping back to 10%, 12%. It should be going quicker, actually. No, it's doing something else. Encryption, decryption controller, great. Okay, let me try to update these while we're waiting. No, it wants to finish the other thing first. All right, well, that's going to be a while. It's at 100% though. It should ask for a reboot. Yeah, it's taking its time. There it goes. All right, restart. If you notice, Windows Server 2022 is very much like Windows 11 in the aspect of they changed a lot of the screens that kind of fit the same way. The only difference here you'll notice is that it outputs a little more data, like shutting down service, update orchestrated service. You don't have that on Windows 11. It's something totally different on server. Active Directory is available on server. Some things that you'll always use. I'm trying to think of other things. File servering is a lot different. You have much faster file servering. You also have more reliable file servering compared to Windows 11. Windows 11 gives you only X amount of computers that could connect to that one system. It gives you a decent amount. I think it's like 20, I think, where Windows Server, you could buy more licensing to push yourself further up and have more access. So if you need to have 300 people connect to this machine, you can. That's your difference. You know, it allows you to, it doesn't lock you down compared to Windows 11. Now, if you're having 300 people going into this server, it probably can't handle that. This is not one of those types of servers. This is more for a small office, 20 users and below kind of thing. If you're going 20 users and above, you'll want to go into Epic at that point. You want to go into the AMD Epic series, not really Ryzen at that point. You'll also want to use different types of memory. You'll also want to use a different type of case and other stuff like that. So, but if you're interested in that and you have a business and you want to do that, we do that. We do go to that higher degree. This just happens to be, a small office. So we're starting, come on. We will have some larger builds coming up in the next year. We have a few servers that are going end of life. And when they're on end of life, they need to be replaced. I put end of life in quotation marks because Microsoft still supports it for a little longer after with no issue, but they're running on a chance of having problems. So we will be replacing them soon. And when we go to do those, we will still stream those as well. Those will be probably Supermicro builds. We usually like Supermicro motherboards. They just happen to work really well for servers. We will be doing an Epic build. I think probably February. I think it's February. We have it scheduled for. We're still waiting on AMD on that, if they're going to change anything with the newer builds. Usually in January, they come out with the newer processors or introducing the newer processors for Computex. So we're probably waiting off a little bit to see how that works out. If there's going to be something that's brand new that's going to be really great, or is it going to drive down the price of, let's say, older, new current processors, but down a little bit. That's usually why I recommend most companies do their upgrades in February and March compared to anything earlier. just so that they know they're getting the newest stuff, or just be able to see if the newer stuff is better, or to get better pricing. You know, that's always a better option. So sometimes you get an older processor, like a 1-year-old processor, for a lot less, just because the newer processor came out. It's kind of like cars the same way, except probably worse, for the fact that computers come out more often. So it is available that way. All right, see, now things are starting to start to turn green on me. That's good. Let's check the Windows updates and make sure everything kind of came up working right. There's probably more updates. Let's see, driver updates. I might have to get the other drivers directly from GIGABYTE. I might have to ask. Sometimes GIGABYTE will, if you send an email over to GIGABYTE, sometimes they will respond and give you a list of the drivers for that other operating system that may not be supported directly from them, but you could get it from a different vendor, directly from the chip manufacturer that's manufacturing that chip for that board. Takes a little bit of investigation to do that, but it is well worth it. All right, this is going to take a while for updates, but guys, I think you guys get the point here. We do server products. This is obviously Windows Server 2022. We will be doing more videos on this. We might do another few live streams as well, as just for examples of how to set up servers correctly. We are going to go over Active Directory in a few more months. We're probably going to go over Active Directory as well as the build out of Active Directory, how to get Active Directory to communicate with the workstations, how to get your workstations to all flow from one script, to load up, like, you know, automatically load up network device, network map drives, as well as printers, install printers automatically. That's all part of Active Directory. So we're going to go over that in upcoming videos as well as live streams. I may not do a live streams for that because it's very hard. You need to have 2 workstations to do that. That's probably a video out topic, so we can have a little bit more faster flow for that. But again, I might bring it up if we're at a customer or something, want to do a live stream, we can do it. But that's it for this one. This is Windows Server 2022 standard. We may have another live stream before Christmas. I don't know yet, or the New Year, maybe. Probably more after. Probably more likely. All right, so guys, have a happy holiday. If you're celebrating Christmas, Merry Christmas. If not, have a great New Year, hopefully. And whatever other holidays you guys may have, that's we'll see you in the next one. All right, have a great day.